Today's episode is sponsored by Branding Iron, Advertising, Marketing, and Public Relations. Since 2007, Branding Iron has helped bring awareness to the mission of volunteer firefighters. To learn more, visit them at brandingiron.com.
Hi, this is firefighter John Dansquano from the Lakeside Fire Department, and you're listening to Dr. Richard Gassaway on SA Matters Radio. He's helping us to see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 28 of Situational Awareness Matters Radio Show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of the show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. Before we get into today's episode and interview, let me take a moment to give you a brief update about the new website, the premium membership program, and the long-awaited relaunch of the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. We're making progress, albeit slower progress than what I would like. Be patient, the wait will be worth it, I promise you that. I'm incorporating many great ideas being shared with me by SA Matters community members, and it takes some time to get it right, so hang in there. I want to take a moment to thank those who've gone to iTunes and Stitcher Radio to give the show a 5-star rating and to provide me with a written review. I'd like to share a few of those reviews with you here now, not to brag or anything, but simply to say thanks to those who've taken time to go over and write the reviews. So here are a couple of them. Chiefy2 wrote, OMG, a must-listen-to podcast. The visionary approach to the way training and incident operations should take place has filled my brain up. We'll be listening to this one again. Geo1084 wrote, Chief Gassaway is a top-caliber leader and educator, keeps us safe by teaching us what to avoid and how to maintain awareness on the fire ground. McCurark, I'm sorry if I'm messing it up. MCRUARK. Use these for training frequently, as well as information from his website and Facebook. The podcasts are great to play while getting paperwork done because it always ends up in a kitchen table conversation about where our lack of SA is and other ways we can improve ours and our members in our department. Keep up the great work, Chief. Just a Firefighter, just a FF, says there are a million speakers out there talking about tactics. Dr. Gassaway spends a ton of time on the road talking about something that is often forgotten about. Situational awareness is something that should be on the front of our minds, and oftentimes it isn't. Listening to the podcast is the right thing to do. Stay safe. And my friend Chief David Hodges in Murrayville, Tennessee, wrote, being a longtime member of the fire service, I've always been interested in firefighter safety. SA Matters is one of the best tools I've seen, not only to identify problems or safety issues that relate to firefighters, but also gets into the guts of the issues. In other words, why it's happening, why we allowed it to happen, and how we can prevent it from happening in the future. SA Matters also looks at mistakes made by others, not to blame them, but to use them to make the fire service better. Keep up the good work, Rich. So thank you, Chief Hodges. And we've got some more. Here's one from an assuming a Marine, USMC ARFF, aircraft rescue firefighter. Boy, I'm guessing there, and I'm sorry that I don't know the rank structure, even though my son is a Marine. This podcast makes learning from firefighter mistakes and fatalities much easier. I listen on my way to work every day. Well, thank you, for that feedback, Marine, and thank you for your service to our country as well. And we've got some others, and maybe I'll share some on a future episode. But thanks for everybody who is providing me with that feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, email, or through my website link. I got to tell you that it really inspires me, and it makes me want to work harder for you. So thank you for that. This episode is an interview with technology guru Darrell O'Donnell. I met Darrell through my social media channels. Darrell is located in Ottawa, Ontario, and runs a very successful consulting and coaching business where he bridges the knowledge gap between the technology creators and innovators and the front-end users of that technology, us, the first responder community. As you can imagine, that's no easy task. Darrell has a special passion for technology that helps first responders develop, maintain, and improve situational awareness while providing rapid access to critical information that can aid in decision-making. We recorded this interview in Darrell's home in Ottawa, where he invited me to join his wife Nancy, his daughter Haley, and his son Connor for dinner. Coincidentally, it was Connor's 15th birthday, so I got to be part of that celebration, which was really cool. I was in town working on a project that brought 40 researchers and practitioners together from around the world to develop an international curriculum for compartment fire behavior training. It was an awesome opportunity to share and learn with some amazingly smart and talented fire service leaders. I was honored to be selected by Peter McBride from the Ottawa Fire Service to develop a situational awareness and decision-making component for that curriculum. This will be, to my knowledge, the first international curriculum that incorporates a full day of decision-making and situational awareness training. The interview was recorded on Sunday, October 19. By the time this podcast airs, listeners will know that yesterday, October 22nd, a man shot and killed a soldier here in Ottawa. This happened across the street from our hotel. For those who may be interested, I'm going to post some pictures in the show notes that I took from our balcony moments following the shooting. We live in a world that has many challenges. Please do everything you can to ensure your situational awareness is strong and remain vigilant on and off the job. Okay, let's get into our interview with Darrell O'Donnell as we talk about the interface of technology and operations. I received an email from Darrell just, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said, "Hey, I see you do some situational awareness stuff, and I do too, and have you ever written anything about situational awareness and technology?" And I said, "Yeah, I've written a few things." And he says, "Well, point me in the direction of the stuff that you've done, because I'd like to reference and use some of that stuff." So we kind of struck up some conversations and shared some things back and forth. And I happened to ask him, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Ottawa." And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be coming to Ottawa in a couple of weeks." So he said, "Hey, let's get together." So here I am. I'm at Darrell's house, and we've just had a nice dinner with his family and celebrated his son's 15th birthday, and that was a really cool thing to be part of. And now we're going to talk about how technology integrates into situational awareness, and maybe more specifically to the situational awareness matters message that I'm delivering for first responders. Darrell, welcome to the show.
Thanks a ton, Rich.
So let's just start out by having you tell the audience, in not techno-geek language, what you do. So, the firefighter, company officer, battalion chief out there, frame up what you do, that they get a sense of what contribution you're making to the public safety community.
Okay. Yeah. So what I normally do is I work on a technology basis. I work with operators. I call them operators. All of our first responders, emergency managers, to make sure that they're getting the technology pieces that they need. What I find is that there's so many technology teams out there that have a lot to offer, really, but they don't know how to speak ops. They don't get operators. They don't understand what it's like to be, laying your lives on the line and relying on technology, but also just the simplicity that's needed, especially during a high tension, high panic situation, which is where your message on situation awareness matters comes in. The role I play as a translator at times. I work to make sure that they're getting what they need out of their tech teams. The projects I'm working on are trying to break down what I would call on a technology basis trivial things. Road closures. Sharing information about what roads are open in an area seems so trivial. It's not a technology problem at all. It's, yes, technology can make that information move a lot easier, but not if we don't break down the silly barriers of people and process that are in the way of the tools of the technology. The weird part of me is that I'm that technology guy. I can go head to head with the tech guys. I can speak geek. I speak it fluently, but I also can sit and I work with the operators one-on-one, or I'll sit in a command center or in a vehicle with them and figure out what the problem is. What problem is there that I can help solve that's operationally relevant, not that's a feature on a list of features of a piece of software or hardware. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a different approach to things, is focusing on the operational impact. And also, especially some technologies can actually radically change operations. But you have to approach those ones slowly and make sure that someone's willing to make the investment and take that risk to make a jump change. Some changes happen slowly, they evolve, you get better and better. Sometimes you have to make a jump. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that I find are the hardest ones. We can maybe talk about those a little bit, though.
Now, my personal experience, and then I'll just pepper that with observation, is that the technology people in a municipality and the public safety people in a municipality don't always seem to be sharing the same objectives or the same goals. I think back to some of the challenges that I face with technology people. I would go to them and say, here's what I need, and they tell me what I can't do and what I can't have, and seem to have lost sight of the fact that we are the customer and they are the provider of the infrastructure that allows us to serve our customer. But it seemed, in my experience and observation, that sometimes the tail wags the dog, and the technology people seem to want to drive the cart or drive the what technology is needed when they're not the front end responders. And I would guess a whole lot of this trying to get those two competing mindsets onto a common cooperative playing field might be a lot of what you do.
Yeah, it is. In IT, there's lots of IT organizations that are powerhouses. They exist for their own sake, and they're like little fiefdoms. They've forgotten that the reason that they're there is to serve. It's in the first responder community. There's a clear you're there to serve, often with your own lives. An IT person gets in there and they run and they control so much, they forget why they're there. There's a lot of very high performance companies who have had massive changes in their IT departments because that happens there too. But once those IT departments realize I am there to serve and only to serve, and that they can go elsewhere, which the cloud technologies, people are going elsewhere. Once they start to serve, magic stuff starts to happen because they come in and realize. One technique I use, and this is, I feel like a broken record at times when I talk about the two pieces of data that just aren't being moved. One is the healthcare system, the hospitals and stuff. Let's back up to road closures. Road closures really starts to help me break down those IT barriers. I've been in many cities in Canada and in the States, talking with the public works group, the IT groups, and when people realize that road closure information is not being shared effectively with their first responders, you can almost see the wheels turning in their head saying, hang on a sec. So if my grandmother gets into an ambulance or is helped by fire, needs help, and they don't know the road's closed, this is going to seriously impact things, as opposed to response being a measure on some chart somewhere. This is real now. Mm-hmm. There's no answer that says it was due to a road closure outage that IT forgot to share or didn't enable. No, this is real. This is their family that they're thinking about then. So road closures is when it's, like I said, so simple. Yeah. But it breaks down that barrier. They realize this is why I'm here. And I'll tell you this, what's really neat is quite often I end up in situations where IT is fighting to control everything.
Yeah.
And first responders aren't exactly the most mild personalities, generally speaking, not at senior leadership levels.
Yeah.
So they go head to head. This one just knocks it all off. There's no ego anymore. It's all about, wow, how can we fix this? And they had no idea that the problem was there. Now, when somebody says, I need a green button to go and do this, or I need something to do this, part of the problem is they may not know what you're saying.
Yeah.
They may hear your words. They don't mean the same thing in geek.
Yeah.
Classic, my favorite example of same words, totally different meaning, coming out of the LA riots when the Marine Corps was called in. And LAPD asked for cover. That has a totally different context in the police world. So when the Marines started firing massive numbers of bullets into buildings, they had no idea what was happening. Well, they were providing cover.
Right.
Both extremely professional organizations, trained to the hilt. Wrong word.
Yeah.
That one, I never forget about that one, because people will nod, yes, this is what I need, but IT is hearing a completely different message.
So what's the magic that bridges the gap between a field responder who doesn't speak geekology, and I say that respectfully to the technical oriented people who are out there who are brilliant, but the technology people know technology so well that sometimes they have a difficult time bringing their expert knowledge to a basic level of understanding for us. So we get frustrated with them, they get frustrated with us, and I think as we get that frustration, we just kind of grow apart in getting anything done.
Oh yeah, you butt heads.
Yeah.
Yep. I find it, this is a funny one. I mean, I've been trying to figure out how I've been doing this for a while, and I've realized that the biggest technique I teach people to do is tell stories, which, if anything, is probably even more simple than road closures. When an IT person, as opposed to someone in fire saying to an IT person, I need this, it's a whole different world when they say, here's the problem. I'm sitting here, I know I'm going to be dispatched, and I know there's pretty good odds, given the weather out right now, that one of the roads is going to be closed. And it's going to impact me when we got a 60-foot apparatus coming down the street. Turning these things around is tough, and by the time I see the road closure, it's too late. I've committed, I'm losing valuable time, and minutes are lives. When that story is told to IT, it's a different thing than I need to know where the road closures are. Because they're immediately thinking, well, that's in public works. No, I can't connect those systems directly. Or if they can, it's going to be effort, and they don't have the budget allocated to do any of these effort for free in their own internal budget for the chief or for the firefighter they're talking to. But when they realize that this fire truck is stuck and has to turn around and maneuver these things backwards is not trivial. And it's going to cost literally minutes, and houses burn down in minutes nowadays. They frames the whole thing differently. Okay, how do I solve this problem? As opposed to, I don't have the budget. They immediately start, okay, what can I do? And they start to become a lot more, I think, effective, because they start looking for the easy solutions, which are usually cheap, as opposed to going and building a new road closure management tool for the public works, the administrative staff, the fire, the police, and everybody gets this magical tool that doesn't work well for anybody. They just want to move the information that probably already exists somewhere in. So by telling a story, that helps understand what it is that the fire folks are looking for. But then I spin it around and say, okay, IT folks, what did you hear? Techies, tell me what you heard and make sure that these align so that the fire on this, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. I mean, yeah, because literally minutes means lives, as opposed to I need to know where the road closures are. Then we'll talk about, okay, how can we start sharing this, and what would that mean? For example, does it mean that in the truck there's a screen where there's a map? Does it mean that there's dispatch information is updated more often, and what does that mean? Road closures seem so simple again, but in dispatch, change happens extremely slowly. So every fire group I've worked with wants road closures. They want it on the dashboard on a device, because it's going to take 6 years potentially to get the union to agree on the changes at the dispatch center, because this is new training, new capability. You have to do some negotiations and stuff. The reality is once they have it on the dash, dispatch will adopt it almost immediately. So it's storytelling. That's the crazy part of it. It's how do you tell these stories.
So you have a consulting business that does well helping to, I guess, bridge the gap that brings the solutions to these problems. Am I framing that right?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of technology delivery. I mean, meaning I would build out products. We had commercial software. I mean, I call myself a reformed vendor. Now I'm there more as a facilitator to help make sure that these folks are telling each other the right stories. So it's a very small effort in comparison to a large project. I mean, some projects, I'm less than 5% of the time and effort.
Without identifying the players, are you able to tell on the air and be generic the story that you had told me off the air about the person who was in an audience that was technical, and then the storyteller stepped in and how it changed the dynamic of understanding? Because I thought that was powerful. So in a generic way, without throwing any players under the bus, what happened there?
So I've got one project I'm working on. We've got typical meeting starts off with all of the operators meeting with the technical team. And
when you say operators, do you mean like dispatchers?
Operators. No, in this case was we had police, fire, ambulance, ranging from, I would say, mid-level, so relatively senior people, but still boots on ground.
Okay, so what you call operators, we might call end users. Yes?
Yeah. And I also I differentiate between what I call operators, which are people who are they're getting their hands dirty. Ideally, they've got some people they're leading.
Okay.
Also, the other end is you I would call a senior leader. You are sitting at a different end of the spectrum. You've been an operator, but you've moved into the senior ranks.
Yeah, okay.
You have a different mandate.
Okay.
So we had a room full of operators. So in the police world, my kind of inspector, got lots of people reporting to them, but there's still many layers before the chiefs get involved.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of fire in this particular meeting, but we were talking, and people were just absolutely stuck to their BlackBerries, thinking about the weekend, and there was no retention, and they weren't there other than being physically there.
And the technical person was doing the talking.
Technical person,
they were all like zoned out.
Oh yeah, they're talking about somebody said our requirements, and I you'll never hear me talk about and brag about requirements, but this is someone else talking about requirements. Say the system must be easy to use, and anyone in requirements hates that term. Easy to use doesn't mean anything. A lot of my firefighter friends say, okay, it's got to be firefighter proof. I'm like, I like that, because it actually isn't a question of how good is the firefighter, it's is it worth me using it? Right. That's the barrier I like to throw.
Right.
So you talk about easy to use, and this guy says, well, it uses the Office 2011 keyboard, toolbar ribbon thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I looked and went, oh my God. These folks weren't even using Office in Office 2011, and if you ever use that, it's a pretty complicated piece of kit. And my client said, can you jump in? Because I was training him on how to tell the stories. I said, yes, absolutely. I said, so let me get this. I explained the feature. I said, so would this, and I told a little story about how they could already know how to use many different things. Like if it's Office, you can do cut and paste just like everything else. It works just like Word and Excel. The problem in this case was that they didn't use Word and Excel, so it really fell down completely. But we told a story, and then people started to lean forward. They started to engage again.
Set their BlackBerries down.
Put their BlackBerries down. They literally, and it's funny because you can almost, if they didn't have their BlackBerries in their hands, their arms would be crossed, leaning back.
Right.
And it's a physiological change. They lean forward. They light up and get engaged. And then he described the next feature, and they leaned right back, and they were gone again. That's the same meeting I was telling you about, where it had the same team, where we had the one guy jump up and pound the table.
Yeah.
You want to hear about that?
Well, before we get to that, I'm just curious. The technology person who they were lost, and then in came the storyteller, and they were found, and then it went back to the technology person, and they were lost again. Do you think that technology person knew? Could they see they were losing the audience? So you talk about situational awareness. This technology person, even though the clues and the indicators are in the room, that the connection has been lost. The screen went fuzzy, and
there were even salespeople in the room that were there too, and there should be the spotters almost, the ones who are saying, you know what, we've lost them, but they just saw a few people were kind of politely listening. They didn't get the fact that they were literally gone. Yeah. Everyone else was processing other stuff, other business.
Yeah.
So, they don't get it. Yeah. But you think about when you're laser focused on something, and this is a pretty intense room because, frankly, technology people presenting to first responders is scary for technology people.
It's scary for first responders too.
Really? Because I thought it was more. I always thought it was boring for first responders when I first started.
If we see it as important, it's scary for us because we know we need to understand it, but we can't understand it. But we don't want to speak up and say we don't understand you. So we sit there quietly because we don't want to look dumb because we don't understand it.
And people wonder why when these big CAD rollouts and RMS rollouts they roll out and they don't work because no one was speaking the same language. For whatever the barrier reason is I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm afraid to talk about it. I might sound like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's part of what telling stories breaks down because we all tell stories. Everybody knows how to listen to a story. As long as the storyteller can tell a reasonable story. It doesn't have to be a good story.
Yeah.
But if you start talking about features and requirements and do you agree with feature 192 and someone's like, I don't even know what it means, but I don't want to be the guy who says that.
Right.
That's what happens. People just, things get rubber stamped and moved on, whereas a story would have broken it apart saying, no, I didn't need this capability, or trying to think of an exact example of where stories come in.
So would you say that in general out there, that maybe part of the problem is that the really deep thinking technical people don't or struggle with how to convey the technical nature of what they're trying to convey in a story so that the operators say, that I understand.
That's part of it. Yeah. That's part of it. It's not even a question of them not knowing how to tell the story. It's they don't know that they need to. They think when they're speaking geek that everybody understands them. But even amongst the geeks, it doesn't work. Yeah. Like, even amongst the geeks, I could say we, because I am one. I kind of bridge both areas. Not a first responder myself, but I work really well with them. The geeks, we've learned to technically tell stories because your idea of real time, for example, as a phrase in real time is a great example of one. Real time in fire response probably be measured in, if I said I could get you road closures real time and you had a road closure within 5 minutes of it happening, that might be good. I deal with other military contractors where real time is 1/60th of a second or better. Oh. So when I say real time, I mean real time may mean in the computing world, it's a huge gap. Yeah. So we learn to sort of poke at, and technology people are very good actually being very blunt about saying, I don't know what you're talking about. They stop doing that with their clients. They stop doing that with the operators. They're afraid to say, I have no idea what you're saying. Just like the operators are afraid to ask the tech or say, I have no idea what you just said to me. But you can see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've done neural side. You can watch their physiology go, they glaze over, they're gone. And you'll see the same happen on the tech side. Operators will talk, this is what I need, because operationally I need road closures. The IT guy's like, look, my boss is going to give me that. He's done. He's thinking about the weekend now. It's the same thing happening. But that story breaks it down. And it freaks me out. Like, I'm just like, it can't be that easy. And it's proving that easy. So that's what I'm doing, is teaching people how to tell stories.
To the tech people.
To the tech people and back.
Yeah.
Because if you can't tell a story about it, if I can't present to you that now, tell me what's happening, here's what I think is happening, and you get me, I don't know, you got it slightly wrong. Yeah. You'll be able to adjust me real easy, and I'll go, okay, hang on. May need to go and take out requirements and make some technical notes, but at least we're telling stories and speaking the same language.
What's the value of tech people doing what we would call in the first responder world a ride along? Just instead of telling you what we do, just come out in the field,
watch,
and just watch what we do. Does that happen? Do they do that?
I thought it happened everywhere, but no, it doesn't happen very often. It's always happened with me. My projects that have succeeded, I've worked on some that have gone down the tank. We didn't have direct engagement with operators in those ones. sitting with the operators, and literally, I mean, I go and literally sit in the dirt.
Yeah.
It's the only way to learn.
You were talking about one of the examples where somebody said you want to talk to the operators, and they said, you can't talk to the operators.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the beginning of that project too?
Yeah. I know I'm jumping all over the place. Because we talked about so much offline that it's like, man, I wish I was recording all these things that we were saying offline. So
so I mean, it kind of flows as a story. It would be otherwise I'd be telling you the conclusion before telling you the original. So I worked on a project for it's fine to say it now. It was a classified project then, but for National Defence Command Center here in town in Ottawa. It's our National Defence Headquarters. This is a system we created, a very basic incident management system, software that would manage simple flow of information. They had real information flow problems. Everything was on paper and getting lost, and no one had situational awareness. By consolidating the information, though, they were able to derive far higher levels of situational awareness. So we created this system, but my guys were all excited because one of the captains, that's being a military captain, second level officer, jumped up and was very excited about what we had. And then my colonel heard about this. He says, I hear we're almost operational. I said, no, we're not. I said, we got the captain over there is real excited. I said, but frankly, he's a shiny object guy. You give him any new technology and he'll be real thrilled, and then he'll be done with it in a week and move on. I said, the major behind him, who is in our meetings every time with his arms crossed, when he's happy about it and uses it, we're ready, we're done. About a month, 5 weeks later, I guess, 3 to 5 weeks, we had released the version. We go and brief the guys on what it is. So we sat in the operation center. I was set there for 24 to 48 hours over shifts before we did anything. We released him, and he looked at the colonel, and he said, sir, I'll use it next shift. And he literally, his body leaned forward. He said, I'm going to use it next shift. And everybody's body leaned forward and looked. And I looked at the colonel. I said, we're done. The system went operational the next morning after that shift because he was like Mikey. Once he tries it and finally he likes it, everybody adopts it. Yeah. But the real thing was it was operationally valuable. He knew it improved the information flow, and he had higher situational awareness of the madness that was happening during the military operations. They coordinated all around the world because he had all the information he needed at his fingertips, and it wasn't overwhelming, and it wasn't missing anything. So they adopted that system probably 2002, 2003, right around New Year's there. Years later, I get invited to a call, and somebody said, to a lunch, and somebody said, I need to bring you in. This is a real big, heavy-hitting contractor. Said, we need to bring you in because there's a system we're working on, and we heard you might be able to help get adoption rates back up because we're starting to lose our users, and we think they're going to turn it off, in which case we lose a project. I said, okay, I'll come on in. I said, let's go and sit down with the operators and find out what's wrong. And they said, oh, we're not allowed to talk to the operators. I said, what do you mean you're not allowed to talk to the operators? He says, no, we have to go through the analysts and then through the internal team, and then they talk to the operators, and we get a report back. I'm like, I can't help you. Yeah. And I found out 2 years later, and I talked to the colonel, and he's retired now, and we stay in touch. He and the lieutenant colonel found out about it. It was the system we'd worked on. And it was taken off about 6 months or 12 months after I had that lunch. It was taken off. It still runs on the network. It's not used by anybody. Operators turned it off. They stopped using it because the IT group had taken it over, forgot about the operators, and turned it into an IT ticketing system. So they was managing IT incidents and operational life and death incidents. So it fell down. Yeah. But horrible to hear, but yeah, I can't do anything about it now. That said, so they're not using anything. They're using another system which I helped build.
Okay. So. All right. Now I'm gonna switch gears for a minute because one of the things that you and I had a conversation about before I came here to visit with you was that I had said to you that I shared with you my frustration about some interaction that I've had with some IT people or technology software developers who make these big, bold, honking claims that their particular software creates situational awareness. And that's probably one of my biggest peeves as I go around and I see these vendors at all the fire trade shows that they're peddling their wares on the premise that their software creates situational awareness. And I come across this, this is the basis of this blog article that I wrote. I come across this guy who made this bold statement, and I asked him, I said, well, what is situational awareness? And he couldn't even give me a definition of what the term meant, and he jumped like a technology person does, square. I mean, just he dove deep. I mean, good thing he was holding his breath, because he went deep, and he started telling me about all the features, and I mean, he was very proud of what this technology would do. But I had to glaze over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy was 40 minutes into this what I'd call a tirade about the features of this software on my simple question of what is situational awareness. And when he was all done, and he ran out of air, and he said, do you have any questions for me? And I said, yeah, I'm going to go back to the first question that I asked you. What is situational awareness? Now, he doesn't know me, so he doesn't know where I'm coming from or the lens or anything from this question. And he jumps, he takes a deep breath, and he dives deep into the features again. And I had to stop him this time because I didn't want to go through that 40-minute rant again. And so, what is your perspective on this? Does technology create situational awareness?
No, it can create an environment where situational awareness levels are increased, though.
Perfect.
Because, and this on the
we didn't rehearse this, but that's the answer I wanted to hear.
Well, and that's this happens all the time. I mean, there's a frustration on the technology side. I mean, if someone's saying that it creates situational awareness, well, that's how do you control mental state? I mean,
exactly.
We're not there yet.
The people that are saying that don't understand that situational awareness is a neuro process formed within the mind of an individual. Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
So the technology can't do it, but what they really mean is it creates the environment for situational awareness. They may have been correct in that it could help manage information flow to help improve your ability to maintain your high levels of situational awareness and prepare you to not get degraded when things went to hell in a handbasket. Odds are, given technology state, probably not. The harder part for the technology people, though, is even if their technology can help improve your situational awareness levels, they have difficulty getting the answers out from the clients on what do you need in order to increase your situational awareness needs. My conversations always started, every single situational awareness project I've ever worked on has started off with me asking the question, well, what do you need in order to maintain situational awareness? And they say everything.
No, that's
I'm
not
like,
true.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to show you everything. But the good thing is I come out of every project I've worked on has also been map-based, GIS-based.
Yeah.
I jokingly say that my clients can't even spell GIS, and I don't want them to. It's a damn map. But in the GIS realm, I can turn on and go to the site and show you 1,500 different layers of data and guarantee you will immediately understand. I don't want everything.
Right.
It's just a mess.
Right.
So now it comes down into deeper technical term, information exchange requirements. Basically the what have you got? What do I need? Then we get into the how do I get it question. Mm-hmm. That's the conversation that needs to happen in order to increase situational awareness. I also need to ask, when do you need it? Because on a day-to-day basis, you may want lots of various types of information. When you have got 3 different departments responding to a single incident, you're probably laser focused and you don't care about that extraneous stuff. You want to focus solely on, half a mile around this site. Anybody else, that's somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
Don't even bother me and tell me that we've got a tornado going down and 50 miles away. Because yes, on a day-to-day basis, I care. Right now, I can't care.
Right.
Somebody else is going to go solve that problem. I need to focus right now on this half mile of land.
Yeah.
So technology can help, not until somebody answers the question, what do you need?
Yeah.
What do you not need?
I've heard some of these vendors, peddle their wares. They say, well, we've designed something that can give you access to anything, any and all information that you need to know. And I think, boy, you talk about taking an incident commander and putting them under stress. The quickest way to overwhelm them and shut down their ability to make a decision is just overload them with information. And what we really need, and I think you're right that some commanders are maybe not necessarily good at articulating this because they're so good, they got such expert knowledge that it's hard for them to bring to words exactly what it is that they need in the moment, in real time. And and if we could get commanders to think about that, it really is a very small amount of really important information.
Very small.
That we need.
And especially when I deal in multi-agency, so I deal typically, I get involved. I don't get involved directly with working just on fire or just on police. I work on multiple police services or police sharing with fire and ambulance or crossing a border. That's when it becomes a lot simpler because they start off, I need everything. No, hang on. When you call each other, what do you email each other about? What do you call each other to find out about? And I can generally find, here are the patterns of information at small amounts and not to very much level of depth because fire doesn't need the depth of information about police. They need to know a couple things. Like, you're responding to an incident, wait for us. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything beyond wait for police. You can dance around in your mind or if you care about why maybe, but you don't need to know and you can't know. Yeah. But all you need to know is wait for me.
Have you noticed, I don't know how far into the implementation of technology that you actually get beyond the consulting and design stuff, but are you aware of any or do you have any concerns about people in the first responder community giving all of their attention to how to work the technology? In aviation we call it, heads down on the technology, that they're going to be looking down at the screen and saying, how do I get from screen 1 to screen 2, and then where on screen 2 is the information that I know, and all the while, all the other real time clues that are not technology based are all happening, radio traffic and visual clues and everything. And do you see that there is a risk that the operator or the end user is so focused on how to use the technology and get to the information they need that they're missing?
I think there's a risk now because some of the stuff is so clunky to use. They don't even to get to it. They're overwhelmed and they're ineffective. I think you're talking about Dr. Micah Ensley's work on air traffic control and stuff. They've learned that it doesn't work. You fall down. When you make it too complicated on this one side, I cannot use the other part of my brain to handle the fusion of all the things I need to do. So I look at what I like about what I'm seeing technology-wise is there are many more task-specific tools that are very, very centric, with a few buttons and a few things on them that you don't have to worry about the tech. It's just there. It becomes a tool that's in your hands and you're using it while you're maintaining your situation awareness. It's when someone says, oh, right, need to go to this first tab, and this is the weird one because normally it's the second one down. This one's the seventh one down, the right side, not the left side. Yeah. Their brain is processing that information. They're very effective on that. They're gone.
Yeah. Do you think that the technology will, and maybe it's there, I'll be showing my ignorance here if I ask this and you say it's already there. The equivalent for a first responder access to information might be something similar to what Siri is on an iPhone now. I need the pre-plan for address 123, and based on a verbal instruction, I don't have to use a mouse and go screen to screen.
Exactly. I know the system should know, and that I'm going to get you that Google Glass video.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly one of the things. Because the system should know where am I going, and there are some key words pre-plan. That should be very well understood. That you shouldn't have to go, right, this is a residence, I need to go to the residence page, then go to the second tab and find the pre-plan.
Right.
It knows exactly where I'm going and why I'm going there. Give me the pre-plan. I'm not going to 5 houses and an industry.
If the system knows the address you're going to, it might be as simple as saying fire hydrant. And then up comes the layover of the fire hydrant that's going to serve that address.
Yep, and that's another piece of information.
So this video, we can put a link to it in the show notes.
Absolutely.
All right, briefly say what they're going to see in the video.
Yeah, so this is it's Google has sponsored. It's a Google Glass. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the concept, other than as it is explored for value. But this is a firefighter down in the States somewhere who has gone in and built some tools, and you'll see him going through literally saying, the siren has gone off, the bell's ringing. still putting on his clothes, and you can see the information trickling across. It says 2-alarm residential, multi-residential unit coming across his little screen. So as he's getting dressed, he's getting an idea what's going on. Pulls up, literally says hydrant. It throws up the map in front of him, and then there's an overlay saying it should be right behind that parked car. Then he says, I don't know if he says pre-plan or does he say floor plan? Because I would have triggered if he said pre-plan. That's a slightly different meaning, obviously.
Yeah, right.
But that shows up and is shown as an overlay, just and you can still see and look around. Can sort of look at the floor plan through it and then still see the room.
Yeah.
So it's a really neat example of possibilities.
Yeah.
It's not used operationally and stuff, but it's got some real thinking. All of it looked very simple. And what I really liked about it was sounded almost like the exact same words of, where are we going? Do we have a pre-plan that would already happen? Now, typically the pre-plan, someone we hopefully would have a binder in the back and be able to index it and find the pre-plan.
Yeah.
Hopefully nowadays it's electronic, but many places aren't.
Many places it's not.
Saw a City of Waterloo guy, I mentioned earlier, a firefighter who had built on a playbook, a very basic, wasn't a real map, looked like a map, but it had no real world coordinates, but it had buttons on every major facility, all of the arenas, and it would show the pre-plan to show where the ammonia tanks are and everything like that, so that they had that quick asset. But he was, oddly enough, not proud of his solution, but it was used by his whole department, which blew my mind. I'm like, you have no idea how hard it is to get firefighters to adopt something operationally, because they have so much kit to work with.
They bootleg that, right?
He just did it. It was done in-house.
Yeah.
Without IT. And once IT found out about it, boom, war.
Really?
It was war. Thankfully, now the guy who he was reporting to is now no longer the deputy chief. He's now the chief.
Okay.
So I'm sure he's knocking some heads, but it was sad to see that they tried to squish him and put down cover. Like they almost laid down covering fire on him. It was just horrible.
Huh.
So this kid
why would they do that? Because they didn't control
they're worried
the project,
about that.
Or?
They're either they didn't get a project. I don't know if that had happened. But more likely, they're afraid of having to support it. They don't know what it. Well, what does that mean when you have it through in everybody's truck? Well, right? He goes. I'm sure he probably said stupidly, potentially. Well, it's in everybody's truck.
Yeah.
The biggest hard thing was that the playbook disappeared because RIM BlackBerry stopped making them.
Yeah.
And didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
That was the hard part. Even though they're in town in Waterloo.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. So the technology is not, you can't drive the solution, but that Google Glass shows the thinking that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what it needs is more operators who are more technophobes, because they're the best.
Yeah.
Ones who are operationally focused and won't adopt technology unless it's adding value.
Yeah. All right. So out there is the company officer, battalion chief, district chief, something less than the chief of the department. From the mind of the technology-oriented person, what advice would you give for us about how best to get some of our most pressing technology issues or frustrations addressed so that it's going to help us, not make us more frustrated?
I think the best thing that can happen is if a group of both some senior leaders, even with all the way up to the chief, but those on the ground leaders, but even potentially a couple of the brand new, 1 year on the job, got into a room to tell war stories of, my God, the crazy stuff that we should have known about.
With the
technology people listening. Because not telling the technology people what they want to do. Because operators, the reason I use the phrase operators are very direct, and operators are very pragmatic, and operators make decisions on very little information because that's what they have to do to get their job done. Yeah. They will tell people exactly how they want it solved, and it's wrong.
Yeah. So if you
tell me what the problem is, we can start telling the stories of how we can solve the problems.
I just had this epiphany. If I went to my doctor, I'd tell him about my pain and my problem, but I wouldn't tell my doctor how to treat my problem.
Or
that's his expertise.
Even if you do, many people do.
Yeah.
It's my appendix or whatever.
But they don't know that. They're guessing.
They don't know that. They're guessing that. And the doctor will make sure that that's correct or wrong. The thing is, we tend to have a lot more respect for our doctors because we have trust. Between the operator community and the technology community, trust is gone. It's been broken.
Yeah.
That's if somebody said, "Okay, hang on, let me understand this better." An operator may say, "You're not listening to me."
Yeah. So if the operators and the technology people sat in the room, the best thing, assuming that the technology people are, they're in the room with the, their heart in the right place of wanting to be helpful to the end user, we would sit there and we wouldn't tell them what we want is the solution. We would simply tell the stories about what is our pain and what challenges are we facing, and then let them suggest to us treatment or fix modalities.
Yeah, I would say actually the operational side needs to talk about the here's where we are story, but also here's why it's such a problem, but here's where we want to get to, not how we're going to get there.
Thank you, Darrell, for sharing some of your valuable insight about technology and operations and how we, the first responder community, can better interface with the technology people. Thank you to Nancy and to Haley and to Connor also for inviting me into your home and giving me the opportunity to have dinner with you and celebrate Connor's birthday. That's it. Episode 28 is complete. Thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with us. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd appreciate a 5-star review as well. Not only will that motivate me to work harder for you, but it will also help others to find the show. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It's free, and when you sign up, you'll receive a free special report I've created for new members titled 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.